Lex Luthor is one of the smartest, most dangerous villains in all of comics. Eisenberg's might be the worst version of Lex Luthor ever put to screen. And it's not just because he's awkward or weird or twitchy. It's because he fundamentally misses the point. Now, almost a decade later, Nicholas Hoult is about to give us something we haven't seen in years. A Lex Luthor that actually gets it. And here's why. Lex Luthor's greatest weapon has always been his mind. He's a genius, a scientist, an inventor, a businessman. He's the kind of guy who walks into a room full of aliens and still thinks he's the smartest one there. And half the time, he's right. Now sure, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex technically has brains, but he doesn't feel like a genius. He feels like a hyped-up Sheldon Cooper doing a bad Joker impression. He doesn't inspire fear or respect, just secondhand embarrassment. Hoult's Lex? Cold, composed, calculated. The kind of guy who doesn't need to shout to dominate a room. You believe this man could outthink Superman, and you kind of want to see how he'd do it. But intelligence alone isn't enough. Lex Luthor should command presence. He should walk in the room and make you nervous, even if you're Superman. Eisenberg's Lex? He didn't command respect. He begged for it. He didn't intimidate Superman. He annoyed him. Even his own girlfriend looked like she didn't take him seriously, and neither did the audience. Hoult, on the other hand, that dude looks like he could snap Superman in half just by staring at him. Not because he's physically imposing, but because he knows something we don't. That's power. That's Lex. Lex Luthor hates Superman. But not because he's evil. He hates him because he sees Superman as a threat to humanity, to progress, to himself. Lex believes man should be at the top, not some flying alien in a cape. Now tell me, what the hell does this have to do with that? Eisenberg's Lex has no clear motivation. He's just chaotic. And Lex Luthor is never chaotic. He's a man with a plan, 10 steps ahead, always in control. Hoult's Lex isn't driven by chaos. He's driven by purpose, by ideology, by the belief that Superman is a problem he needs to solve, for humanity's sake, and maybe his own ego. That makes him dangerous. That makes him compelling. That makes him Lex. James Gunn isn't just rebooting Superman. He's rebooting everything we know about this world, and at the center of it is a Lex Luthor we've been waiting for. A Lex that's smart, a Lex that's serious, a Lex that sees Superman not as a god, but as a challenge. If Gunn and Hoult get this right, Lex won't just be a villain, he'll be a legend. And that leads us to a really important question. How did we even get to a point where Lex Luthor was reduced to a cartoon stereotype in a billion-dollar blockbuster? Because if you go back and look at Superman's most iconic stories, All-Star Superman, Birthright, For All Seasons, or even the animated series, Lex Luthor isn't just a classic villain. He's the villain, the blueprint, the mold from which so many others were cast. Lex is supposed to be everything Superman isn't. A self-made genius versus an alien born with every advantage. A manipulator versus a symbol of transparency. Someone who chooses to be feared versus someone who inspires hope just by existing. And for that to work on screen, you have to believe that Lex genuinely sees himself as a hero. That, deep down, he thinks he's saving the world from the illusion of Superman. But Eisenberg's Lex, he doesn't come off like a savior. He doesn't even come off like a businessman. He comes off like a guy who wandered in from a different movie entirely. One where everyone talks in riddles and no one's ever heard the word subtlety. Let's be clear, this isn't just a casting issue. It's a writing problem, a tone problem, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes Lex scary. Because real Lex Luthor doesn't need to jump around or speak in tongues to scare you. He can do it from behind a desk, with a calm voice and a single sentence. Think about it. The most terrifying version of Lex isn't one who screams at Superman. It's the one who smiles at him. The one who shakes his hand in public, then dismantles his life behind the scenes with money, power, and influence. That's why Nicholas Hoult's version finally hits the mark. Because instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, Gunn's script goes back to the core. Lex as a symbol of human corruption, envy, and control. And yeah, maybe he doesn't have Doomsday in this version, but honestly, He doesn't need him. Lex is the doomsday. Not a monster made of bones and rage, but a monster made of spreadsheets, strategy, and unchecked ego. He doesn't beat Superman with brute force. He beats him with narrative, with optics, with control of the conversation. And that's way scarier than a giant gray alien, punching buildings. Now, let's talk about another major aspect of Lex that often gets overlooked in movies. Because Lex Luthor isn't just a villain in the shadows. He's not hiding in some lair like a Bond villain. He's a public figure, a media mogul, a philanthropist, someone the world sees as a genius, a visionary, a man of tomorrow. He throws charity galas, he funds space programs, he gets featured on the cover of Time magazine, and he does it all while secretly plotting Superman's destruction. That duality is crucial, and it's completely missing from Eisenberg's version. There's never a moment in Batman vs. Superman where we genuinely believe the world admires Lex. From the first second we see him, he's already twitchy, off-putting, suspicious. He gives weird speeches. He acts like a lunatic. He's the kind of guy you'd cross the street to avoid, not the man you'd trust to lead your country's most powerful defense initiatives. Compare that to Hoult's Lex, who could literally run for president and probably win. In fact, that's exactly what comic book Lex Luthor eventually does. He becomes the president of the United States, and people cheer for it. Because he's so good at presenting himself as the hero, most of the world doesn't even realize he's the villain. That's a terrifying kind of power. And it's the kind of power that makes Lex Luthor unique, not just among Superman villains, but among all comic book villains. He's not just Superman's Joker. He's worse, because he operates within the system. He is the system, which makes him the perfect foil for a character like Superman, an alien immigrant raised with small-town values, trying to bring out the best in people, while Lex believes people are at their worst and need to be controlled. This difference in worldview is the engine behind every great Superman vs. Lex Luthor story. And finally, that brings us to maybe the most important difference between the two versions. Because if Lex is written properly, he should redefine Superman. He should force Clark to confront questions he doesn't want to answer. Is the world too dependent on him? Is he holding humanity back by always stepping in? Can people truly grow if there's always a Superman to save them? In the best stories, Lex doesn't just try to destroy Superman. He tries to discredit him, to turn the world against him, to show that Superman is a crutch, not a hero. That's what Hoult's version nails. It's not just about beating Superman in a fight. It's about winning the war of ideas. And in this case, the movie makes that conflict feel personal. Because unlike Eisenberg's Lex, who sees Superman as a vague stand-in for God or his childhood trauma, Hoult's Lex sees Superman as a direct threat to H, a reminder that no matter how smart or successful he is, he'll never be the most important man on the planet. That kind of hatred is specific, it's intimate, and it makes every one of their confrontations feel electric. Lex doesn't just want Superman gone. He wants the world to realize they never needed him in the first place. That's why fans finally feel like they got the Lex they deserved. And if the DCU plays their cards right, this version of Lex could go down as one of the greatest live-action villains of all time. Not just because he's smart, or dangerous, or well-acted, but because he finally reminds us what Lex Luthor was always meant to be. The most dangerous man in a world full of gods. If you want to hear more about why the new Superman movie might finally save the DC universe, check out my breakdown of the film's secret themes and what they reveal about the future of the franchise. Or if you're still mad about how WB handled the last Lex Luthor, you can watch my full deep dive into the rise and fall of the DCEU right here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And let me know in the comments, which version of Lex Luthor do you think was the most iconic? I'll see you in the next one.